So, for example, if I want to go for a top school in the US and I'm an Indian, so my score has to be above 730.
Tyagi, it's great having you over here in this video, and thank you for taking out your time for providing value on how to prepare for GMAT exam.
Yeah, hi Nikhil. It's good to be speaking about GMAT. I'm happy to share my experiences. So yeah, go ahead.
So, Tyagi, the very first thing is, can you tell us more about the overview of a GMAT exam? What are the different sections that are available, and how much time does each section take actually?
So Nikhil, so GMAT essentially has four sections. The first one is AWA, which is analytical writing ability. The second one is integrated reasoning, that is called IR. The third one is the quant section, and fourth one is the verbal section. So the total time of the test is around 3 hours 30 minutes. Okay, so this includes the 10 minutes break you have in between, which are optional and you can take while switching from one section to another. Another thing before we drill down to each of this section is that the paper is very adaptive. Okay, so as you go attempting the questions and you get them right, so the paper becomes difficult and difficult. The exam becomes difficult and difficult, and your score also essentially improves. Okay, for example, if you make mistakes continuously in 2 to 3 questions, your score might drop drastically. Okay, so let's talk about the first section, that is analytical writing ability. So it's basically an essay for which you are given 30 minutes to write, and basically you have to critique a argument and use your critical thinking to critique various elements that are given in the questions. Okay, the second part is the IR, or integrated reasoning. So this part is also for 30 minutes and it has 8 questions, and it tests your ability to analyze data and answer questions basis on basis of that. Okay, these two sections don't contribute to your overall score, which is out of 800. So they have their individual scores, but they don't contribute to the overall score. The third section is the quant. So quant has two parts. The first one are general MCQ questions, and the second one are data sufficiency questions. So quant section has 31 questions, and you are given 62 minutes to attempt that. Okay, and this contributes directly to your overall score out of 800. Okay, and the last section is the verbal section. So verbal section is subdivided into reading comprehension, sentence correction, and the critical reasoning. And this section has 35 questions, and you are giving 65 minutes to attempt that.
Now, how to prepare for a GMAT exam? How long does it take, or how much time should one spend on preparing for a GMAT?
So if you look at the total time period, it generally takes 3 to 4 months to prepare for a GMAT exam, and that essentially depends on how much workload you have. Because I think these are for working professionals, and you must be working and preparing. Okay, so generally it takes 3 to 4 months, but it might take you longer, and it might take an year, or you could do in 6 months. So that depends on you completely, right? For me, the whole time period was about 6 months. At the end of first 3 months, I gave my first attempt where I scored 700. That I was getting a good quant score, but my verbal score was not up to the mark. So I took another 3 months to prepare, and then in my second attempt I scored 740. So my time period for this was 6 months. So my approach was to keep a constant score in my strong suit, which was quant, right? And improve on my verbal score as much as I can. So that was my whole strategy, behind taking a longer time period to attempt in GMAT. And mostly I kept myself to the official material which is available on the net, and official material, official mocks. Apart from that, I took a online course called EGMAT. So I prepared my verbal using that. I would like to add that if you are in a rush of giving GMAT exam, So I would recommend taking an online course, because that brings you up to the speed of attempting the GMAT in a shorter period, right? That might not be possible when you are trying to prepare on your own.
Now, one of the biggest questions which a lot of youngsters or a lot of people have is that which section should they start with once they start giving their attempt in the GMAT exam?
Now GMAT allows you to attempt section in a variety of ways. For example, you can choose to attempt, for example, quant first, verbal second, AWA third, IR last, right? The default setting is AWA first, IR second, quant third, and verbal the last. So I used this pattern only because I was most comfortable with this. So what happens is AWA is a little bit of chilled out section basically. So in that you have to write an essay. So that gives you time to calm your nerves, which you might get when you start your exam. So so that's why I followed this pattern of attempting AWA first, because that section gave me some time to literally calm my nerves and be a little calm throughout the exam. So it depends, totally depends on you. I think you can practice this when you are giving your mocks, like which section, which pattern you are following, and through which you are getting the maximum output. So it totally depends on you. For me, the default pattern works best.
Now, time management is one of the most crucial aspects of a GMAT exam. So, how do you suggest one should prepare themselves in terms of time management?
So I think time management is the single most important point to keep while attempting a GMAT, right? So when I was taking you through the four section, talk about the quant section, okay? So we have 31 questions and we have 62 minutes to attempt it. So that leaves you 2 minutes per question, okay? And the exam is a little bit, it's adaptive. So when you attempt the questions and you get them right, so it gets tougher and tougher. Okay, so you have to optimize your time per question. For example, the easier ones you should try attempting to complete them in under 2 minutes, right? While the tougher questions you keep 2 minutes each for them, a little more than 2 minutes for each of them. So essentially, if you look at the average time per question, you have to keep it 2 minutes. And in verbal, it's even more difficult, right? It gives you just 65 minutes to attempt that. For example, if you read a whole paragraph in the reading comprehension, that may take you in itself 2 to 3 minutes to read. So you get less and less time for each question. So it's the single most important thing to keep in mind. So you have to, time yourself regularly, and you have to optimize your time per question.
In terms of the books, which are the books which you recommend for GMAT preparation?
So I would recommend sticking to the official material first. In addition to that, for theory, Manhattan is a good resource. Okay, and then in addition to Manhattan, there are a lot of resources available online. So for that, I would recommend making your account on lot of GMAT related blogs. So first one is a GMAT Club, another one is Beat the GMAT. These blogs keep you up to date to the latest happening, what is happening in this world, right? And also it gives you a lot of other resources to prepare for.
Now, a lot of youngsters, when they are preparing for GMAT, they are working as well. So, how did you juggle between your work and your preparation for GMAT?
One thing I really found really useful, and it really helped me, was being consistent. Okay, so you have to take daily some time to prepare. For example, if you take my case, I used to take out 2 hours every day during the weekdays, and take a little more time during the weekends. And same was during the later stage of my preparation, where I used to spend the weekends to take the mocks and utilize the weekdays to review the mistakes. Okay, so I think daily you need to take out 2 hours, and that depends on you. For example, if your office starts late, you can put in early morning time to prepare for it, or you can prepare the time you have after your office ends. And another few things would be, for example, if you have a longer commute, like I used to have a longer commute, so I used to use that time to review my mistakes, or revise theory. So all that time can be efficiently managed, and I think if you are putting 2 hours daily and spending longer time on weekend, I think you should be good.
Now, what advice would you give to anyone who is preparing themselves for the GMAT exam?
The first thing you should keep in mind is, the schools you are targeting. Okay. So, for example, if I want to go for a top school in the US and I'm an Indian, so my score has to be above 730. Okay, so you need to take that into account while setting up the time for preparation. For example, if you are aiming for 760, you need to give 6 months, right? For example, you might have to give a second attempt if you don't get in one, if you don't get through in one attempt, right? So I think the first thing to keep in mind is, how much score you are targeting, and set a time period for preparation for that. Okay. The second thing I would recommend is being consistent. You shouldn't be taking, a lot of breaks. For example, you're studying for 1 week, you're not studying for the next week. So that would really screw up your preparation. Okay. And the third one I would recommend is, sticking to the official material and the official mocks, because they only give you a good idea of what you're going to get in your, which exam you're going to get. Okay. Another resource you could use is, like skim through the articles of American newspapers, for example, New York Times or Wall Street Journal. That gives you a lot of idea about the American writing and the kind of English that comes in GMAT. And lastly, you don't have to be nervous at all, because it's not like you cannot give it again. You can give 2 to 3 attempts, so that is fine with all schools. So you don't have to be nervous, and even if you don't do better in the first one, you can always go ahead and take another attempt after preparing more.
So, Tyagi, it was great talking to you, and thank you again for taking out your time and providing value on how to prepare for a GMAT exam.
Uh, Thank you, man, for giving this opportunity, and happy to share my experiences.